We are covering the fifth meditation on the impermanence of life, which includes other examples of impermanence. The principle of impermanence is very important, yet many people remain unaware of it. Although our bodies and lifespans are inherently impermanent, we are blinded by our attachment to permanence, preventing us from seeing the truth of all phenomena. Therefore, during our study and practice of the Dharma, meditating on impermanence is essential. Many Kadampa practitioners dedicate themselves to the diligent practice of impermanence. Once a practitioner has conviction regarding impermanence, they can easily succeed in other practices. Of course, we cannot merely pay lip service to impermanence. Instead, we should incorporate it into our daily practice. The literal meaning is easy to grasp, so anyone who is literate can read the text and understand its significance. However, putting impermanence into practice is not so simple. If you do not meditate on it, you may feel that the practice of impermanence is unremarkable. But once you begin to practice it, you will eventually realize how challenging it is to overcome the deeply rooted clinging to permanence in our minds. Yesterday, we discussed the impermanence of the idea that whatever is built will eventually collapse. We also studied the four basic aims of the Kadampas, which we should contemplate and meditate upon carefully. Now let's proceed with the following text. Whatever rises high will inevitably fall. Exalted status and invincible armies will not last forever. Manhatri, the universal king, ruled over the four great continents as a golden wheel-turning king. He held dominion over the 33 heavens, shared the throne of Indra. On the battlefield against the Asuras, he was undefeated, yet in the end, he fell to earth and perished in the grip of insatiable greed. Many sutras, including the Mandatavadana Sutra on the causes and conditions of King Mandatri, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Great Parinirvana Sutra, and the Madhyamagama Sutra, discuss the universal king Mandatri, whose merits were unparalleled to those of others. In the Generosity chapter of the White Lotus, the great biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, Mipham Rinpoche states, "A very long time ago, when humans had infinite lifespans, there lived a king named Uvanaswa, who reigned over 84,000 small countries and housed 80,000 princesses. At one point, the king developed a protuberance on his head, from which a boy adorned with excellent characteristics emerged. Upon the boy's birth, many auspicious signs appeared across the nation, and milk flowed naturally from the princesses' breasts. The princesses all said, 'Let the boy drink my milk.' Consequently, he was given the name meaning King of My Milk, or King of Headborn. A fortune teller read the boy's face and predicted that he would become a universal king, turning a golden wheel that would grant him power over 4 continents. Upon growing up, he indeed reigned over the 4 continents, Jambudvipa, Uttarakaru, Purva-Videha, and Aparagadhania. He brought great happiness to living beings and preached the path to prosperity and pleasure for tens of thousands of years. Later, Manhatri decided it wasn't enough to rule only the human realm, so he set out for the celestial realm. Upon reaching the celestial realm, the 62 gates of the celestial palace opened for him automatically, and the gods prepared a throne for him that was lower than Indra's. Thus Manhatri made a vow, "With the power of my merits, I wish to sit at the same level as Indra." In response to his wish, Indra immediately shared his throne with Manhatri. From the perspective of other beings, Mandatri appeared the same as Indra in looks, qualities, and manner of speech, except that Indra never blinked and walked slightly faster. Mandatri enjoyed the same 5 kinds of celestial pleasures as Indra, which lasted for a total of 36 Indra's lifespans. During the reign of the last Indra, Asuras attacked the heavens of the gods. Unable to defeat the Asuras, Indra fled to the celestial palace in a panic and shut the gate. Manthadri volunteered to fight the Asuras. He rose into the air and positioned himself above them. Terrified by Manthadri's prestige and merits, the Asuras fled. Witnessing the defeat of the Asuras, Manthadri felt a sense of pride, thinking, "My power has surpassed everyone's. I should no longer sit alongside Indra. I should drive him away and become the sole protector of both the human and God realms." At that time, Indra was the past life of Buddha Kassapa, a highly revered figure. The moment Mandatri harbored that malicious thought, his merit was completely destroyed. In the blink of an eye, he fell to the gates of the palace where he had once lived in Jambudvipa. Only then did he realize that the desires of all beings are endless, prompting him to speak some verses before his death. One of them is, "Though the rain of silver coins falls, the greedy are not satisfied, but the wise know that desires and pleasures are suffering, and it brings no benefit to have more." From this story, we learn that the desire for power and status can never be fully satisfied. Many people are discontent with what they have, always wishing for a higher status. In fact, even if they possess everything in this world, they remain unsatisfied, and this greed will ultimately lead to their downfall. As some masters have taught, desires destroy hope. Before embarking on the Dharma path, many people relentlessly pursue worldly matters. After studying the Dharma, they begin to realize they have been living a life devoid of meaningful goals and direction, and that their life is already half spent. They feel remorse for their past actions. Such reflections are especially common among those who delve deeply into the Dharma and have developed conviction in the teachings. In fact, the truth of "whatever rises high will inevitably fall" can be found everywhere in life. Throughout the course of human history, you can observe in real life that rulers, religious leaders, and local officials, anyone who holds power, authority, or enjoys high status and wealth, cannot remain firmly in their position forever. Judges who sentenced others last year may find themselves in prison as inmates this year. This phenomenon is not uncommon. So, what is the value of a transitory position? Impermanence has always surrounded us, but without receiving the relevant teachings and with our minds veiled by a clinging to permanence, we have failed to recognize the truth of everything. There are two kinds of impermanence, coarse and subtle. Subtle impermanence refers to the changes that occur every split second, while coarse impermanence refers to changes that are easily noticeable, such as the rise and fall of one's social status or the gain and loss of one's wealth. Setting aside subtle impermanence, any mindful person can easily perceive coarse impermanence. However, most people are oblivious to impermanence. They disregard it entirely, keeping themselves aimlessly busy with mundane matters, and when they cannot obtain what they desire, they experience great anguish. Why is this the case? It is because they do not understand the nature of everything. One can observe that impermanence prevails everywhere. For example, the judge or statesman who imposed the law on others last year may find himself imprisoned this year due to misdeeds such as corruption. Chen Liangyu, the former Communist Party secretary of Shanghai, was sentenced to 18 years in prison in April 2008 after being convicted of financial fraud, bribery, and abuse of power. According to the Chinese magazine Word Executives Digest, a report submitted to the State Council by the investigation team of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection revealed that senior officials at the municipal, district, bureau, and county levels opened 1,322 bank accounts with a total value of more than 98.6 billion Chinese yuan using anonymous identities or aliases. Among these illegal accounts, Chen Liangyu, had 53 anonymous accounts, with a total amount close to 300 million Chinese yuan. On May 23, 2009, Roh Moo-hyun, the former president of South Korea, committed suicide by jumping off a mountain, reportedly due to the pressure of ethical and legal scrutiny. He had long pursued a clean, honest, and responsible government, yet many of his subordinates and family members were involved in corruption, which was a great irony for him. Eventually, he could no longer endure the situation and took his own life after leaving a suicide note. However, the reasons for his abrupt decision remain unclear. Chen Shui-bian had been a Taiwanese politician and lawyer for many years and was later sentenced to a total of 19 years in prison for 2 corruption cases. Although he was eventually granted medical parole, he remains prohibited from any public speaking. Additionally, Cheng Keji, former governor of the Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region of China, and Gao Yang, former director of the Chengdu Publicity Department, once wielded power and authority, but have since faced severe legal sanctions. Their experiences embody impermanence. One can also easily grasp the truth of impermanence from the change of abbots in a monastery, or the shifting attitudes of a lay practitioner. Since everything is impermanent, we need not feel bad or get upset about what happens to us. Furthermore, when things happen to others, we can recognize it as a manifestation of impermanence. Therefore, this practice is essential for all of us. If we internalize the principle of impermanence, we can clearly see that everything in our lives is like a dream or an illusion, and nothing remains unchanged. The state of perfect Buddhahood, on the other hand, can never diminish or be tarnished, and is worthy of the offerings from both humans and gods. That is what you must cultivate to attain. Knowing impermanence. What use to transitory status, wealth, and power hold for us practitioners? In today's competitive society, even within a small group of 2 or 3 individuals, there is often a fierce struggle for leadership. However, careful reflection reminds us that even state leaders eventually return to being ordinary citizens. So what's the point of pursuing such fleeting benefits in life? Therefore, the only thing worth pursuing is eternal Buddhahood and nothing else. This explains why so many Buddhists, after studying the principle of impermanence, show no interest in competing with others over worldly goals. We must seriously contemplate and meditate on this teaching. If we truly believe in the principle of impermanence, we will know how to act accordingly in our daily lives. This is very important. Many people may grasp the literal meaning of the principle, but it's difficult to say how many have developed true conviction in their minds through practice. Now let's continue with the impermanence of friendship and enmity. Friendship and enmity, too, are far from everlasting. One day, while the Arhat Katyayana went out to beg for alms, he saw a man holding his son in his arms, savoring fish meat, while striking a female dog gnawing on bones with a stone. What the master saw with his clairvoyance, however, was this. The fish had been the man's own father in that very lifetime, and the dog had been his mother. An enemy who had killed him in a past existence had been reborn as his son to repay past karmic debts. Katyayana cried out, "He eats his father's flesh, he strikes his mother. He cradles on his lap the enemy who killed him. The wife is gnawing at her husband's bones. Such is the rare and wondrous law of samsara." I never dared to eat fish when I was still a layperson. When the school canteen served fish, I would feel annoyed because I could only eat rice and nothing else that day. However, many of you, including some monastics, salivate at the mention of a fish dish. This indicates that your old habits have resurfaced, and most of you must have indulged in fish, right? The fish might have been your parent or another family member, so you should wipe your mouth and begin to repent. Thus, beings with whom we had a strong affinity in a previous life may become our most disliked beings in this life. Those we are emotionally attached to are often enemies from a past life seeking to settle their karmic debts. From a Buddhist perspective, the person we are particularly fond of in this life is likely our enemy from a past life. Frequently, young adults ask me, "I am in a close relationship with so-and-so. I can't live without him, and I think about him every day. Can you tell me whether we were husband and wife in a previous life?" I always respond, "You two must have been enemies in a past life." My answer is not just a random comment without any scriptural evidence. If you cannot live without a person and would consider suicide if you lost him, this means your emotional attachment stems from karmic repayment from a previous life. In contrast, those you dislike in this life might be family members to whom you were most attached in a previous life. Not to mention past lives, even within one lifetime, mortal enemies can later become like-minded friends. They may even become part of each other's families, forming deep bonds and extraordinary connections. Such occurrences are not uncommon. Therefore, don't consider the above story merely a legend and feel indifferent to it. You must be acutely aware of the impermanence of interpersonal love and hatred. With this understanding, your attachment to others will gradually diminish, which can significantly aid your practice. Otherwise, you may become firmly ensnared in the quagmire of worldly relationships and find it difficult to escape. As a result, you will struggle to practice effectively. To deepen your understanding, I will share a few more Buddhist stories. Here's a story from the Vinaya. A father loved his son so deeply that he committed many misdeeds on his behalf. When the father died, he could not let go of his attachment to his son and was reborn as a bull in the family. Later, his son slaughtered the bull and consumed the beef. When the bull died, he was reborn as a bull in the same family once more, and his son again killed him. For a third time, he was reborn as a bull in the family. Just as the son was about to kill him again, Sariputra appeared at the front door. With his clairvoyance, Sariputra heard the bull say, "I have been here twice, but you killed me. My dear son, now you are about to kill me again, which fills me with sorrow. I truly cannot endure this anymore, but there is nothing I can do." Sariputra conveyed this message to the son, who then set the bull free. Thus, the meat we consume in our daily lives may come from our family members from a previous life. There are many similar stories in the Madhyama Agama, which you should explore when possible. You ought to read inspiring books that help you understand the law of karma, so you know what actions to take and which to avoid. Don't emulate those who dismiss classical sutras and shastras in favor of fiction focused on war or romance. Such books offer no benefit and may instead cause great harm to one's mind stream. In the Madhyama Agama, there was a man named Mana, whose father Tuhti died and was reborn as the family dog. There was another man named Chandar, whose father was reborn as a beggar. Chandar broke the beggar's arm when he came to ask for food. There are countless stories like this. Therefore, we should make generous offerings to beings with whom we have an affinity, whether they are friends, enemies, or beggars, and take good care of them. Meanwhile, we should dedicate the merit by reciting the mantra of Avalokiteshvara in our minds. Here is a Tibetan tradition. If a person is surrounded by a bee or a mosquito, it signifies that their loved one is still in the intermediate state and not yet liberated, and the Lord of Death allows this loved one to take the form of this insect to seek help through virtuous actions. Thus, when you hear a buzzing sound near your ears, you should recite the mantra of Avalokiteshvara and dedicate the merit, or you may offer some food instead of swatting the bee or mosquito. As stated in the Lankavatara Sutra, the meat one consumes is closely related to one's loved ones from past lives. I see all beings eat each other's meat, and the meat is from their loved ones. Therefore, when you eat beef, the cow was your loved one in a previous life. When you eat pork, the pig was your loved one in a previous life. Thus, it's better not to eat meat. By refraining from eating meat, the merit is immense. Please understand this. If we can deeply comprehend that beings in the 6 realms are reborn repeatedly and constantly become each other's loved ones, we will develop aversion to the joys and sorrows associated with gathering and separation, and we won't become overly attached. When I taught you the verse, "Men who fathered sons in turn are sons, and mothers likewise daughters," from Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, I shared a story about Chan Master Baoji in Chinese Buddhism. Master Baozi, regarded as the emanation of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, was the imperial master of Emperor Wu of Liang. Once, Baozi was invited to a wedding. Upon entering the house, he sighed and sang a song inspired by his clairvoyance. Strange indeed, strange indeed. The grandson marries the grandmother. The daughter consumes her mother's flesh. The son beats a drum made from his father's skin. Pigs and sheep sit on the brick bed. The loved ones are stewed in the cauldron. People come to congratulate, but I must say, what suffering! Why did he sing this song? It turned out that the groom was marrying the reincarnation of his grandmother. When his grandmother was nearing death, she held the hand of her beloved grandson and was very reluctant to let him go, passing away with deep attachment to him. After her death, she was reborn as a girl who eventually became the bride of her grandson. That's why Master Baoji said, "The grandson marries the grandma." Master Baoji entered the room and noticed a little girl eating a pig's trotter. The girl's mother had committed terrible wrongdoings and was reborn as a pig after her death. The pig was slaughtered for a meal at the wedding, so the little girl was consuming her mother's flesh. That's why Master Baoji said, "The daughter is eating her mother's flesh." In the yard, Master Baoji saw a young man playing a drum made from donkey skin. This young man's father had been reborn as a donkey due to his wrongdoings, and the donkey was skinned to make the drum the young man was striking. That's why Master Baoji said, "The son is beating a drum made from his father's skin." Master Baoji looked at those sitting on the brick bed. They were pigs and sheep that had been eaten in the past, now reborn as humans and relatives to one another, gathering together happily. The animals being cooked in the cauldron, however, were the groom's family and relatives. That's why Master Baoji said, "Pigs and sheep are seated on the brick bed. The loved ones are stewed in the cauldron. People come to congratulate, but I would say, what suffering!" Master Baoji observed the wedding with his clairvoyance and found the satire of samsara to be truly absurd and filled with suffering. If we knew the truth, would we behave the same? Probably not. However, since we cannot remember our past lives and know little about the law of karma, we have committed many foolish acts. Therefore, we should embrace the principle of impermanence and reflect on the fact that many worldly pursuits hold no true significance. There is a similar story in the Dhammapada. There was a rich Brahmin in Shravasti who was very stingy. At every mealtime, he would keep the door closed to uninvited guests. One day, the Brahmin was enjoying chicken with his wife and child, and the door was shut. The couple sat their child between them, serving him chicken from time to time. Buddha Shakyamuni knew that, given the Brahmin's merits from previous lives, it was time for him to be tamed and taught. Therefore, the Buddha appeared directly in front of the Brahmin as a monk. Upon seeing the monk, the Brahmin became very angry and said, "How shameless you are! How can you break in without permission?" The monk replied, "How ignorant you are! You killed your father, married your mother, and raised an enemy. How can you accuse me of being shameless?" The Brahmin was confused and asked why the Buddha made such a statement. The monk replied, "The chicken on the dining table is the reincarnation of your father. Due to his stinginess, your father was often reborn as a chicken in many of his lives. Your child is the reincarnation of a Rakshasa, a flesh-eating devil who caused you harm in your previous life. Because you two are still connected by karma, he is reborn as your child for karmic repayment. Your wife is the reincarnation of your mother, who loved you so deeply that she was reborn as your wife in this life. You are foolish now and do not know your previous lives. Only I can discern them clearly." The Buddha manifested his miraculous powers and revealed the Brahmin's previous lives. The Brahmin developed an aversion to samsara. The Buddha explained the teaching again to the Brahmin, and he immediately attained the state of Sotapanna, stream entrant. The sutras contain rich content on the law of karma, along with many similar stories in Khenpo Tsultrim Lodro's work, The Truth of Life. I shared several stories in my teaching, so people with different predispositions may receive various benefits. As long as you remember one of the stories and find it inspiring, you will know what to do and what not to do in the future. Conversely, if you know nothing about the law of karma, you may fall deeper into the abyss of samsara. Therefore, I firmly believe that understanding the Dharma is very important. However, acquiring such understanding takes time and cannot be achieved in a single day. It is highly unlikely that you will attain realization as quickly as a rock falls to the ground. Through long-term effort, we gradually establish right views, such as our understanding of the law of karma. We just learned that sworn enemies could later be reconciled and make friends. On the other hand, even biological parents and siblings may harbor deep resentment and harm one another over trivial possessions or inheritances. Couples and relatives may turn against each other, even resorting to violence over minor disputes. Worldly relationships can change for the most trivial reasons, as stated in The Way of the Bodhisattva. One moment friends, the next they're bitter enemies. Even pleasant things arouse their discontent. Ordinary people, it is hard to please them. Worldly people build relationships easily. Two individuals can become close friends after one gives the other a gift, a few compliments, or just a smile. They can also break up easily. Two close friends or family members can stop talking to each other over a minor misunderstanding. For example, if one friend is in trouble and the other doesn't offer help, or if one friend uses an inappropriate word during a conversation, the other may become angry. Thus, it is hard to please a worldly person. Many such situations occur in our lives. For instance, when someone gives you something or offers you compliments, you both may become close, and you regard their gift as a priceless treasure. However, when that person gives something to someone else but not to you, it can turn you into enemies. As you can see, friendship and enmity are far from everlasting. Many people may resonate with this observation from their own experiences. Seeing that all friendship and enmity are so ephemeral, remind yourself repeatedly to cherish all beings with a heart full of compassion. This is also the essence of Mahayana Buddhism, as those who have studied the way of the Bodhisattva would agree. Sometimes, when reflecting on the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's enlightened activities, my fellow Dharma practitioners and I feel a bit embarrassed about our own Dharma efforts. Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche devoted himself entirely to propagating the Dharma and liberating all beings. He never thought of himself, and consistently selflessly gave to others. His altruistic actions made an indelible contribution to the world. Can we, the descendants of the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, emulate his greatness and selflessness? When I reflect on my own actions, I feel embarrassed, especially during times when I prioritize my own needs over those of others. In any situation, more afflicted thoughts arise if one focuses on me. Therefore, all the monastics and lay practitioners present here should make this aspiration. I will strive to emulate past eminent masters who treated everyone, friends and foes alike, with great compassion. Although it is challenging for an ordinary person to treat everyone equally, we should at least aspire to this approach. It is only by treating others with compassion that we can establish a solid and lasting connection with them. Otherwise, you may befriend one person today and reject another tomorrow, leading to fleeting friendships and rivalries. Good fortune and deprivation are also impermanent. Some people are wealthy and joyful in the first half of their lives, but descend into poverty and misery in the second half. Others endure unbearable suffering in their early years, but later find happiness and fulfillment. There are even those who start life as beggars and eventually become kings. Milarepa's uncle, for instance, held a lavish wedding feast in the morning to celebrate his son's marriage, but by the afternoon, his house had collapsed, leaving him in anguish. The tragic scene was utterly unimaginable. When his father died, Milarepa's uncle and aunt seized the family's wealth, forcing them to leave their home. At his mother's urging for revenge, Milarepa left home to study black magic. While his uncle and aunt hosted a lavish party to celebrate their son's impending marriage, Milarepa exacted his revenge by casting a spell that demolished their house, killing 35 people. With half a day, a joyous wedding celebration turned into a tragedy. How did this happen? During the party, many horses were tethered in the stables beneath the house. One stallion tried to bully a mare, which upset the other stallions and caused a commotion. The mare attempted to kick the stallion, but in the process, she struck a supporting pillar, leading to the collapse of the entire structure. 35 people died, including Milarepa's cousin and his bride. The scene was filled with screams and chaos. It was truly tragic. Milarepa spared the lives of his uncle and aunt so they could witness the consequences of their mistreatment of him and his family. Numerous examples of impermanence exist in both joy and sorrow, such as the September 11th attacks. On what appeared to be an auspicious day, terrorists launched one of the deadliest attacks in human history. Thus, happiness is fleeting and does not endure, while suffering can arise at any moment. Similarly, suffering is not permanent, and happiness may soon follow. Both worldly happiness and suffering are impermanent. However, the difference is that in seeking the Dharma, although one may temporarily endure hardships and face many trials, the suffering will eventually pass, leading to ultimate peace and bliss. Just like the Buddhas of the past and great masters such as Milarepa, some people accumulate wealth and enjoyment through negative actions. Though they may experience temporary happiness, in the end, they will inevitably face boundless suffering. Therefore, it is commendable and worthwhile to endure hardship for the sake of Dharma. In particular, if we invest great effort into ascetic practices while we are young, we are sure to experience profound happiness in our old age, as well as in our future lives. This is also illustrated in the life of Milarepa. There are few people in this world who do not praise Milarepa, including both Tibetans and Han Chinese. After learning of his ascetic practices and his significant realization, which benefited countless beings. Without a doubt, Dharma practice leads to achievement. The key lies in the effort you put into it. In addition to Milarepa, Some Tibetan and Han Chinese Dharma masters were also highly committed to pursuing the Dharma as soon as they embarked on the path. Since then, they have fully devoted themselves to study and practice, so that in their later years, they differ significantly from ordinary individuals in their states of realization and their altruistic minds. This is evident in the biographies of those masters. It is natural that when a practitioner attains a certain state of realization, they will emanate the light of compassion and wisdom, which can bring boundless benefits to all beings. In contrast, if you have not achieved any insights or states of realization throughout your Dharma practice, then even if you attain a certain status or prestigious degree, any positive experience derived from it will be fleeting and ultimately fade away. Therefore, regardless of your social status or identity, you must strive to attain states of realization through practice. Such states do not arise without reason. You must put in significant effort. Whether you are intelligent or not, as long as you are willing to work hard, you will reap what you have sown. This is certain. I believe it is very meaningful to study the words of my perfect teacher. We should contemplate the text repeatedly. Some people do not give this text the importance it deserves. When they come to study at Larangar, they show little interest in obtaining a copy of the words of my perfect teacher. Instead, they seek out texts on the most profound Tantra. While they may acquire those Tantra texts, if they do not understand the basic principle of impermanence, no matter how profound the Tantra is, it is unlikely to benefit them significantly. It's like this. An elementary school student who doesn't even know how to perform multiplication and division wants to obtain a mathematics textbook for undergraduate students. He may receive the textbook, yet without a solid foundation in basic mathematics, he cannot understand what is written in it. Even if he seems to grasp some concepts, it may not benefit his mind stream. I hope you will first establish a solid foundation for your Dharma practice. I have emphasized this repeatedly. You must follow a practical sequence, which will ultimately lead to a fruitful practice. Okay, that's all for today. Many new lay practitioners applaud. Is my teaching uplifting? I have been teaching for over 20 years in this valley, and I have never received such a response. Today is the first time. They applaud more. Thank you, thank you. Applause is also impermanent. Look at those presidents. While in power, they receive endless applause, but when they step down, people applaud just the same. So you should understand impermanence and not get too carried away.